She didn't see the hand coming. 1 second, Elise was setting her invitation card on the check-in counter. The next, her body jerked backward, pushed by someone who hadn't even looked her in the eye yet. The woman in the silk blouse didn't yell right away. She didn't have to. Her shove said everything. This one, she said after the fact, as if labeling trash. She printed her invitation at Staples. The entire lobby didn't gasp, just turned. Sharp, quiet, expensive silence. A murmur of leather shoes shifting and phones rising discreetly into filming position. Elise steadied herself without stumbling. Her folder dropped, papers half slipping out. She reached down calmly, as if dignity lived in how slowly she moved. The woman's name tag gleamed, Catherine Blake, director. Blake & Co. Elise stood, papers in hand, and met her eyes. I was invited. Catherine tilted her head in mock confusion. Sure you were. She turned to the others now watching. This is why we vet the guest list. Anyone can throw on a blazer and download a template. Elise didn't respond. Not to the sarcasm. Not to the tone. Instead, she opened her phone and typed timestamp 8:11 a.m. Incident physical push by Catherine Blake. Statement, this one? She printed her invitation at Staples. Intent public humiliation. Witnesses 15 and 20. Recording status confirmed. Catherine's voice cut in again, sharper now. Don't try to flip this. You don't belong here. The help entrance is around the back. Elise tapped one more line. Language used the help entrance. She hit save, then raised her eyes. You sure you want to be the headline today? The shove hadn't left a mark. But it didn't need to. What lingered was the crowd's silence, the kind that wasn't neutral. It was complicit. Catherine hadn't stepped back. She stood too close, arms folded, her smirk aimed like a dart. If you knew how many people try this, she said, you'd understand why I don't take chances. These invitations mean something. Behind her, security hovered, hands near radios but not quite reaching. The receptionist still hadn't said a word. Elise didn't flinch. She adjusted the folder under her arm, calmly picked up the invitation card from the counter, and held it out. Catherine didn't even look at it. I've seen better fakes, she muttered. Elise let the card rest between them. The watermark is embedded in the cardstock, she said evenly. You can hold it to the light if you're unsure. Oh, sweetie, Catherine said with a rehearsed chuckle. People like you always come prepared. That's not the issue. Someone near the back of the line mumbled, what's that supposed to mean? Catherine ignored it. Elise turned slightly, catching glimpses of the crowd-polished shoes, expensive watches, narrowed eyes. None of them moved. One or two lowered their phones when they realized they might be filmed in the wrong posture, the wrong expression. You're making a mistake, Elise said. Am I? Catherine replied. You want me to believe that out of the hundreds of vetted names, yours somehow just got missed, that you belong in a room full of executives when you entered through the lobby and not the private side entrance. She turned to security now. Please escort her to the waiting area while we sort this out. I don't want this becoming a scene. Elise spoke quietly. It already is. One of the guards stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable. And then someone upstairs shifted. From the mezzanine, Noah Daniels leaned forward. He tapped his phone twice, then slipped it into his jacket. A subtle nod followed. He had seen enough. Back on the floor, Elise's voice dropped to something colder. You should really stop touching me, she said, and stop talking like you're untouchable. Catherine blinked, caught off guard. Just for a moment, Elise returned the invitation to her folder, then looked around the room again, not for help, but to memorize faces. No one stepped forward, but one woman near the pastry bar had stopped pretending to stir her coffee. Her phone was filming, and this time not for entertainment. From the mezzanine, Noah Daniels didn't move, but his eyes sharpened. He had worked enough boardrooms to recognize what most people miss, not the words, but who said them, when, and in front of whom. His camera had captured everything, but now he wasn't recording for proof. He was recording for timing. Down below, Elise still stood alone. But the silence had changed. The receptionist at the desk finally glanced up, just for a second, and met Elise's eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. But her fingers, once frozen on the keyboard, moved tapping quickly, subtly. The screen flashed, a window minimized, a message sent. To the left of the concierge, a bellhop adjusted an already straight luggage cart. His eyes flicked between Elise and Catherine, then toward the security team. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and typed something fast before disappearing into the staff corridor. A guest in a coral pantsuit leaned toward her husband and whispered, "I think that's Monroe, from the FinTech board." The man shook his head. "She wouldn't be out here, getting dragged. No way." Still, the woman didn't stop watching. Catherine continued talking, but fewer people were listening. Her voice had lost its command, replaced by urgency wrapped in sarcasm. You know, the audacity. Showing up like this, with that attitude, thinking credentials are just optional. Elise didn't move, but a woman near the elevator took a quiet step forward, angling her camera to show Catherine's full profile now. Another phone dinged, then another us. In a private group chat for Summit staff, someone posted, "Y'all seen this? Blake just grabbed a sponsor. This is about to explode." Elise exhaled once through her nose, slow and measured. Her folder stayed tucked to her side, the card inside still hidden. She wasn't alone, not yet supported, but no longer unseen. And somewhere in the crowd, someone stopped pretending to scroll through emails and started writing a press release draft just in case. The elevator chimed again. This time, no one made a sound. Even Catherine paused mid-sentence. Two uniformed officers stepped into the lobby, one white, one Latino, both with the weary posture of men who had walked into far too many complaints just like this. The taller officer, Jennings, scanned the room. He didn't look surprised. He looked to Biffer. Disappointed, Catherine moved first. "Officers, thank God. We've had an incident. This woman here is attempting to access a private event with clearly fabricated credentials. She refuses to leave." Jennings didn't look at Elise. Not yet. He looked at the crowd. At the phones. At the tight-lipped receptionist who clearly didn't want to be where she was. Then he turned to Elise. "Ma'am, can I see some identification and your invitation?" Elise nodded, calm as ever. She opened her folder slowly, no sudden movements, no defensiveness. Her fingers brushed past the silver badge inside but didn't touch it yet. Instead, she handed over her state ID and the navy blue invitation. Catherine leaned over, her voice dripping condescension. "You'll notice the font's slightly off. She probably copied someone else's and just..." "Ma'am, Officer Chen," the second officer said flatly. "Let us assess first." Jennings examined the card, flipped it to Sunimi, held it to the light. Elise stood still. Chen glanced over Jennings' shoulder. "Watermarks there." Jennings nodded. "Foil matches. RSVP code format is valid." He looked at Elise, then back at Catherine. "This is a real invitation," he said. Catherine stiffened. "That can't be. Look at her. She doesn't even..." The words stopped in her mouth, but not in the room. Phones caught everything. A pause fell over the crowd like a held breath. Jennings' jaw tightened. "Ma'am, that's not relevant." "I didn't mean it like that," Catherine blurted. But she had. And every camera had heard. Elise remained quiet. Not because she was intimidated, but because silence, in that moment, spoke louder than any accusation. Elise didn't speak. She let the silence stretch. Let it land heavy in every corner of the lobby. The crowd hadn't moved, but they had shifted. Postures were tighter. Phones were still up. And for the first time, eyes weren't just on Elise, they were on Catherine too. Officer Jennings handed the invitation back, and Elise took it without a word. Her hand moved next to the folder pressed to her side. She opened it slowly, deliberately, as if each second mattered. From inside, she pulled out a card. Not her ID, not another invitation, a business card. Simple, thick, with silver-pressed text. She held it flat between two fingers and offered it forward. Jennings took it. He glanced down, eyebrows lifting slightly. Then he read again. Something in his jaw tightened. He passed it to Chen. Catherine peered over curiously. "What now? Let me guess. She's the founder of some Etsy page. Neither officer responded. Chen tilted the card toward the light, inspecting the stock, the weight, the subtle shimmer along the edge. Then Jennings asked, "Are you the same Elise Monroe listed here, Monroe Ventures?" Elise met his gaze calmly. "Yes, sir, Ian, she do. That was all she said. But it was enough to spark motion in the room. Someone near the side entrance whispered, "Wait, Monroe Ventures." On the mezzanine, Noah Daniels stepped closer to the edge of the glass. He pulled out his phone again, not to record, but to check something. His mouth parted slightly. Another guest muttered, "Didn't they fund the Crimson merger last year?" Catherine snatched the card from Officer Chen's hand before he could object. She read the name aloud like it was a joke. Elise Monroe, founder and principal Monroe Ventures. She blinked, then chuckled. "I've never heard of it." Elise tilted her head just slightly. "You might have. In me, Konobu, we underwrote Blake & Co. His fourth quarter expansion. My name doesn't appear on the press releases. But the wire transfers did." Catherine's lips parted, but nothing came out. And just behind them, someone in the crowd finally said it. "She's not on the guest list because she's not a guest." Have you ever watched someone get judged before they even said a word? Not because of what they did, but because of how they looked, how they stood, how they didn't shrink when expected to. If this moment stirred something in you, if you've ever seen silence used as strength, or wish someone had spoken up, drop a comment below. Just type, "She's not alone." Or tell us what you would have done if you were standing in that lobby. And if stories like this matter to you, if you believe in quiet power, injustice that speaks even when the room doesn't, make sure to subscribe. This isn't just a story. It's the kind of truth we're not used to seeing in headlines. But together we can make sure it's heard. Because Elise hasn't even revealed the most powerful thing she's holding. And when she does, it won't be her words that change everything. It'll be what they remember they ignored. Catherine blinked, once, then again, but said nothing. The murmurs around her didn't wait. They spread quickly now, subtle but sharp. "Monroe Ventures," someone whispered. "That's not just a startup. That's a capital firm." Elise didn't confirm. She didn't need to. Instead, she returned the business card to her folder with care. The way you'd place something delicate back where it belongs. Her gaze lifted not to Catherine, but to the lobby itself. Her eyes traveled across the velvet ropes, the chandeliers, the spotless marble floors. She had seen all this before. Not from this angle. Not in these shoes. Not with this badge tucked beneath her hand. 10 years ago, she had walked this same lobby with a clipboard in one hand and a tray of bottled water in the other. Not as a guest. Not even as staff. As a temp. No name tag. No greeting. No eye contact. She remembered the way the doorman looked past her, the way the security guard followed her as she wheeled a cart of supplies into a side room, because she hadn't moved like someone who belonged. And now she was standing in the middle of it all. Same building, same conference, different eyes watching her. And this time, no one could say she'd slipped in through the wrong door. Elise turned to Catherine again. "You said you've managed this summit for 12 years, she said, voice quiet but controlled. Catherine folded her arms. "I have." Then maybe you remember the orientation in 2013, when the reception was moved to the East Wing because of the pipe burst. Catherine opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "I was there," Elise said, "just not standing where you expected. Somewhere near the back." Someone gasped soft, but enough. Another phone went up, and this time it was focused not on Elise, but on Catherine's face. She hadn't rehearsed this. Not the names, not the year, not the exact detail about the burst pipe or the East Wing. It hadn't come from some planned reveal. It came from memory, the kind that doesn't fade when the world pretends you were never there. The first time Elise walked through this hotel, she didn't come dressed in navy wool or silk. She wore a black polyblend dress shirt with sleeves too long and name tag that read simply, "Support Staff, Temp." She was 24, fresh out of school, and she had arrived early. Her shoes were borrowed. Her resume printed on discount paper from a copy center. Her eyes carried hope that she could swallow every bias with good posture and polite answers. She had practiced the handshake, She had rehearsed how to smile without seeming too eager. She had watched the woman in charge glance up from her clipboard just long enough to decide she didn't fit the room. That woman had been Catherine. The words had come later. She's too intense. She comes off aggressive. Not a culture fit. And at least she hadn't argued. She'd smiled, thanked them for the opportunity, and walked back through the same lobby holding a plastic folder that had never been opened. She didn't cry in the hallway. She waited until she got home. And then she stopped applying for jobs that required a photo. Stopped listing her full name on resumes. Stopped believing she'd be invited into spaces like this. But she didn't stop moving. She built her own track record. Took meetings no one knew about. Partnered with people who didn't care how she looked in press photos. She learned how to sign checks instead of chasing handshakes. And now, standing here, she wasn't waiting for the room to respect her. She was giving it a second chance to notice what it had missed the first time. The elevator opened once more. This time, silence arrived with it. The woman who stepped out didn't need an introduction. Her presence did the talking. Silver hair swept into a knot, a charcoal dress that spoke quiet authority. Judge Anita Rowe had entered rooms more exclusive than this, and left them quieter than she found them. She scanned the lobby once, her gaze locking briefly on Elise. Then on Catherine. Catherine, she said, calm but firm. I thought this summit was about leadership. Catherine stiffened. Judge Rowe, I didn't know you were here. I arrived 20 minutes ago, she replied. And I've been watching. Catherine cleared her throat. There's been a restoring situation. A woman attempting to attend with questionable documents. She has a sponsor badge, the judge said sharply. I saw it from the mezzanine. Catherine's lips parted, then closed. She may have duplicated something. I don't know where she got. Elise turned her head slowly. She didn't raise her voice. I don't duplicate access, she said. I fund it. A murmur pulsed through the lobby like a sound wave under the floor. Catherine tried to recover. Look, I'm trying to protect the integrity of this event. We can't just let anyone. Anyone, Judge Rowe interrupted. You know what I meant? Catherine said quickly. No, the judge said again, sharper now. Say what you meant. Phones lifted again. Not one. Not two. Not three. Nearly every bystander had their camera up now. Catherine's face flushed, but she pushed through. We don't know who she really is. She could be anyone. Elise stepped forward. Just 1 foot. Just enough. I've been many things, she said, calm as glass. But invisible shouldn't be one of them. Catherine's mouth opened. Closed! And someone, somewhere in the crowd, whispered, she's not playing anymore. The tension in the lobby wasn't just uncomfortable anymore. It had become accusatory. No one spoke, but glances flew fast, sharp, defensive, unsure. A few guests subtly stepped away from Catherine. Not enough to be obvious. Just enough to not be in the same frame. Elise hadn't raised her voice once. She didn't need to. Every time Catherine tried to regain control, Elise's silence pushed her deeper into exposure. She's trying to make this about race, Catherine blurted suddenly. That's not what this is. But now it was. A man near the registration table shifted awkwardly. A woman who'd been filming lowered her phone and narrowed her eyes. Even the security guards exchanged glances, unsure who they were supposed to protect anymore. Elise didn't flinch. You grabbed me. You questioned my invitation. You called security, she said. You used the phrase, you people. And only now, after all that, do you ask for my name? Catherine clenched her jaw. Mrs. Monroe. Only now, Elise repeated. Only after the badge. Terras or Urinumernum. After the business card. But not when I was silent. Not when I was convenient to dismiss. Behind them, someone muttered, damn. She's right. Even the hotel manager, who had been lingering near the concierge desk pretending to be busy, was now nowhere to be seen. Catherine's tone cracked. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. These events are carefully curated, Elise said flatly, with invisible filters. That landed harder than any accusation. A junior employee near the exit turned their camera toward Catherine. Someone else opened Twitter. A woman in sapphire whispered, she's not yelling. That's the part that scares me. Noah Daniels, still watching from above, had stopped recording. He wasn't documenting now. He was waiting. Judge Rowe said nothing, just folded her arms and stood like a verdict waiting to fall. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the center of attention didn't feel like Elise. It felt like Catherine was being seen for the first time, and she could feel it. Catherine tried to speak, but the words got caught somewhere between her throat and the tightening in her chest. Her gaze swept the room, desperate to find one friendly face, one person still on her side, but everyone looked away just half a second too late. That was how fear starts. Not with screams, but with silence that no longer obeys you. I've worked too hard for this, she said, not to anyone in particular. I've given everything to this company, this summit. You don't just show up and rewrite the rules. No one answered. Not even security. The officers stood still. Judge Rowe remained exactly where she was, unmoved. I've spent 12 years building this network, Catherine continued, her voice rising. 12 years I know who belongs here. But that was the mistake. Saying it out loud. Again, someone near the pastry table slowly set their coffee down. She really said that someone else whispered. Catherine looked at Elise no longer with superiority, but with a flicker of panic. Elise didn't blink. That's the problem. You still think this is about belonging? She took a step forward. Calm, verfremd, controlled, certain. You built something on exclusion and didn't expect to be challenged. Now the room sees it, and it's not just about me anymore. Phones were still up, but the people holding them were different now. There were no more giggles, no more whispers of what's happening. Must have read just recording. Cold. Intentional. A man from HR lowered his phone and turned to a colleague. If this ends up on LinkedIn Live, we're screwed. Catherine's shoulders slumped a little. She tried one more angle. I didn't know who she was. You didn't care, someone said from the back. And that hit harder than anything Elise had said. For the first time, Catherine stepped back. It was only half a step, but it was the kind of move someone makes when they're no longer sure they're welcome. The kind of move Elise had made 100 times in 100 rooms. This time, it wasn't Elise who moved. It was the woman who'd spent her life believing she owned the space. The folder in Elise's hand shifted. She hadn't moved much, just turned slightly, just enough for the badge clipped inside to catch the light. For a moment, the room froze, not because of her voice, not because of what she'd said, but because someone finally noticed what she hadn't said yet. A man near the front squinted. Wait, what's that? Elise opened the folder. No flourish, no dramatics, just precision. She drew out one slim, platinum-edge badge. It gleamed. A soft metallic finish, different from the others. No lanyard, no QR code, no printed barcode, just a symbol and a name. Judge Rowe took a step forward. Her breath caught, but she didn't speak. Elise placed the badge in the hotel manager's hand. Yes, the one who had finally reappeared like fog curling back into frame. His fingers fumbled slightly, but he read it, slowly, then looked up at her. No, he whispered, but Elise nodded. Someone in the crowd gasped genuinely this time. The badge didn't say sponsor. It didn't say guest. It said, Summit founder, surely the Renovation born. 3 small words, but the kind of words that make everything else collapse. People began murmuring, uncertain, then louder. Phones snapped back into the air like reflexes. Every camera lens now tried to catch the lettering. Someone zoomed in. Another person already uploading. Even Catherine had gone completely still. She didn't understand yet. Not fully. But her instinct told her something irreversible had just happened. A woman near the media banner said aloud, Founder. That's not possible. This summit's run by Elise Monroe, Judge Rowe said clearly. Yes, that Elise Monroe. The name had been floating all morning. On documents. On whispers. But now it landed. And it landed with weight. Some people raise their voice to prove they matter. Others just wait until the room realizes it was built on their name. Have you ever seen someone underestimated until it was too late? Drop A in the comments if you believe power doesn't always look the way they expect. For a moment, no one blinked. Then the shift began, not loud, not sudden, but real. It started in the posture of people closest to her. A slight lean forward. That flicker in their gaze when admiration edges into envy. The quiet calculation behind raised eyebrows howling. One woman near the catering display adjusted her lanyard like it suddenly didn't fit. A junior VP whispered to her assistant, "Pull her LinkedIn now. All of it." Judge Rowe stepped closer. "I remember now," she said softly. And 3 years ago, the tech wave grant that rescued the summit from collapse, it came through an anonymous donor. Elise met her eyes. Said nothing. The judge smiled. "You're not new here," she murmured. "You're just unforgettable in hindsight." A few people chuckled, but it wasn't joy. It was the nervous laughter of professionals realizing they had spent years networking in the wrong direction. The hotel manager fumbled again. "Mr. Monroe, I apologize. We were never told." "You were," Elise replied. "You just didn't think the name mattered when it wasn't paired with the right face." Catherine, pale and rigid, watched the scene unfold like a woman trapped behind glass. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. From the upper level, Noah Daniels finally spoke again. "I've interviewed founders, CEOs, people with generational wealth, but I've never seen someone play the long game like this." His phone was still recording. The badge wasn't even the loudest reveal. Because now, Elise was pulling out a second folder, and no one knew what was inside. But everyone wanted to see it. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look up. Elise simply unfolded the document clean, deliberate like she was turning a page in someone else's future. At the top, the letterhead read Monroe Capital Holdings. Just beneath Acquisition of Sterling Strategies, Inc. Fortune earners, who were 4% ownership. One line. But it changed the air in the room. The logo below matched everything in the building on the banners. The invites, even the lanyards hanging around 100 necks. Elise wasn't a guest. She wasn't even just a founder. She owned the engine running the entire event. She laid a second page beside it list of active subsidiaries and controlling interests. Cliff & Marlowe PR, North River Analytics, Griffin Events. One woman from the tech booth whispered, "Wait, we hired North River last quarter." Someone else murmured, "That's our data vendor." Another, in a hushed voice that trembled, said, "That means she's already inside every department we have." Elise didn't need to say anything. But Judge Rowe spoke for her, voice low, like a confirmation only those paying attention would catch. "This isn't a reveal," she said. "It's a reckoning." A man near the window backed up slightly, like he didn't want to be caught on the wrong side of history. A junior VP texted someone off-site, "Find everything you can on Monroe Holdings. Now we're into announcement." Meanwhile, Catherine hadn't moved. But her face had cracked. Not panic, not even fear, just the heavy, dawning realization that this wasn't going away. Elise wasn't bluffing. And this wasn't just about a badge or a breakfast or even an apology. Elise turned toward the screen behind the registration desk. Quietly, she nodded. The assistant she'd barely spoken to earlier stepped forward, inserted a drive into the laptop. The screen went black for 2 seconds, then loaded a single slide and organizational map. At the center, a silver line node, Monroe Capital Holdings. From it, dozens of lines radiated outward. Firms, brands, contracts, 5 logos already present at the summit. 3 more connected to vendors and press. In the corner, a percentage attendee business exposure, 74%. No one moved. Because the room had just learned something terrifying. She didn't just build a seat at the table. She bought the table, the chairs, and the lights above it. The screen faded back to black. No music. No fanfare. Just silence that didn't need permission. Elise closed the folder gently, like someone sealing a chapter knowing the next one had already begun. She turned, finally facing Catherine fully. And then came the words no one expected because they weren't angry. They weren't loud. They were absolute. "Sterling Strategies," Elise said, "was acquired 26 days ago." Catherine blinked, uncomprehending. Elise's tone didn't change. The press release was scheduled for next week. But considering the circumstances, I've decided to announce it here today at the summit. This company helped organize the same summit your name was printed on, beneath mine. Catherine finally found her voice, but it cracked when it reached her throat. No, no, you can't just say that. That's not... It's already filed, Elise said. You'll see the SEC notice hit in about... She glanced at her watch. 13 minutes. The assistant at the back confirmed it with a nod. The press embargo had just lifted. Screens around the room lit up, phones buzzed, live alerts triggered from Bloomberg, MarketWatch, even Forbes. Monroe Capital acquires Sterling Strategies in quiet $60 million deal. A woman near the catering station gasped. Someone else whispered. She waited for this moment, planned it down to the second. Catherine stepped back. Her heels tapped twice on the marble and stopped. You don't understand. I built this company. I gave it my life. And now, Elise replied, still calm, it has a new life. Not stolen, not sabotaged. Just bought, legally, quietly, entirely. Judge Rowe didn't speak, but her eyes were locked on Elise, filled with something that looked a lot like awe. Even Noah, still filming from the upper level, lowered his camera slightly. That's not a twist, he muttered. That's a checkmate. Elise glanced at him, not smug. Just sure. I didn't come here to argue, she said. I came to show you the truth. And then she pulled out one last envelope, unmarked, sealed. This contains the restructuring documents. Department leads have already been notified. New leadership protocols begin Monday, including a full audit of HR complaints. Catherine stared at the envelope as if it might burn her. But what scorched more was knowing she'd never been able to play the game this way. Not because she wasn't smart enough, but because she'd never imagined someone like Elise would be. The applause didn't come yet. No one dared break the gravity. But the envy, it was thick in the air, laced with respect. And maybe, just maybe, a little regret for not betting on the quiet woman by the elevator. Some people chase legacy. Others rewrite it before anyone realizes it's already theirs. Have you ever witnessed someone reclaim power without raising their voice? Drop it if you've seen quiet ambition win the loudest game. She didn't fall. Not physically, but something in her posture collapsed. The marble under her heels felt colder than before. Her hands, still manicured, trembled as she stared at the envelope Elise had handed her like a verdict. Not a slap, not a scream, just silence wrapped in paper. Behind her, the whispers had changed tone. They weren't about Elise anymore. They were about her. I heard she ignored 4 internal complaints last year. She laughed at the DEI panelist. Remember that? Her email from last March. I told you it would come back. Every word chipped at the armor Catherine had worn for years: titles, access, fear-based respect. All of it cracking. The people who once waited for her approval now wouldn't even make eye contact. A junior analyst quietly took a step away from her, as if her downfall were contagious. The assistant who used to trail her with folders now stood behind Elise. Even the hotel staff kept moving. One rolled past with a silver cart, deliberately avoiding Catherine's eyes. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but nothing came out. Her voice, once the loudest in every room, had forgotten how to sound important. And then the phone buzzes started. Not hers, everyone else's. Alerts from news outlets. Push notifications lighting up screens. Social media clips already going viral. On screen, former exec publicly confronted after quiet corporate takeover. A picture of her face mid-shock, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. Frozen in the moment of realizing she'd been outplayed, forever archived. Her name trending, not in admiration, not in legacy, in exposure. She took a shaky breath. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and just didn't care anymore. 3 days later, her calendar was blank. Not just the meetings, the entire profile. Internal access revoked. Company email deactivated. LinkedIn inbox muted. No more invites. No more calls that began with, "We'd love to have you speak." Just a stream of unreadable silence. Catherine stared at the morning light bleeding through her kitchen blinds. Wearing the same blazer she had on that day, Like maybe if she didn't take it off, none of this would be real. But the mirror didn't lie. She hadn't slept. Her phone buzzed once. Gordnissasorn. It wasn't a job offer. It wasn't support. It was a subscription renewal auto build. That hurt more than it should have. She opened her inbox out of habit. There was only one new message. Subject: your speaking engagement at Next Gen Women in Business has been canceled. No greeting. No explanation. Just canceled. She wanted to blame Elise. Wanted to scream that someone orchestrated this. That she was framed, misinterpreted, thrown under a spotlight too harsh to survive. But she knew better. Because in the quiet moments, when there was no audience, no applause, no camera to control, she remembered the words she had said. Every one of them. With clarity. New people. Fake invitation. Does she look like she belongs? They echoed now, not in anger, but in regret so thick it tasted like metal. What haunted her most wasn't the moment Elise revealed ownership. It was the second just before, that split second when she had still believed she was right. Catherine walked past her bookshelf, now half-empty boxes where awards used to be. She paused at one frame, a photo of her on stage years ago, a caption printed beneath it. Own the room, but she hadn't owned anything. Not the company, not the culture, not even herself. Just the illusion. That confidence could protect her from accountability. 6 months later, no one mentioned the lobby incident anymore. They didn't have to. It had become a chapter everyone had read, some in silence, others out loud. The autumn session of the Equity Summit opened beneath soft amber lights. Floor-to-ceiling banners printed with a single phrase. Progress doesn't whisper anymore. And then Catherine stepped on stage. She was thinner, not fragile, but refined. Her blazer fit the same, but something about the way she held it looser, not as armor, made it look different. There were silver strands near her temple now. She hadn't dyed them. She hadn't hidden anything. The room didn't clap right away. They weren't sure if they should. But Elise stood up. Not with drama, just enough. A few followed. Then more, until the applause rose not in celebration, but recognition. When it faded, Catherine stepped to the mic. And for the first time in her life, she didn't speak to impress. She just spoke. 6 months ago, she said quietly, I was the kind of person who confused confidence with character. I thought success meant being right, being loud, being first. A few people nodded. But what I really was afraid of being replaced, of being wrong, of being irrelevant. She exhaled. Let the silence hold the weight. I was living proof that success does not always mean integrity. She looked out across the sea of faces: executives, founders, interns, press. And today, I'm not better than anyone in this room. I'm just someone who finally started listening. The lights dimmed slightly as her presentation slide appeared. It wasn't data. It wasn't branding. Just a photo of her with a group of young employees, diverse, laughing, arms around each other. This is my new metric for success. In the front row, Elise sat perfectly still. Not as a judge, not as a victor, but as a woman who had once stood in the same lobby alone and watched everyone pretend not to see her. Now, every spotlight curved back toward her. But she didn't chase it. She just nodded. Because in Catherine's voice, she recognized something that couldn't be faked. The quiet cadence of someone who had walked through fire and left the ashes behind. The applause came again, softer this time, like a hum of mutual understanding. Catherine stepped off the stage. She didn't look for Elise, but their paths crossed naturally, like rivers that had always meant to meet. They didn't speak right away. They didn't need to. Then Elise did something that froze even the cameras. She stood. She reached forward, and she hugged her. No speeches, no headlines. Just one woman telling another, you didn't break. You built. Somewhere in the crowd, a new hire wiped her eyes. Not because she knew the whole story, but because she understood the feeling of being seen. The summit continued. Panels, keynotes, breakout rooms. But the moment that lingered, the one people told over dinners, in boardrooms, in job interviews years later, wasn't a data point or an announcement. It was that hug, that quiet act of forgiveness that said, redemption isn't given, it's grown. As the hall emptied, a janitor paused to wipe the handrail Elise had touched. Not out of duty, but reverence. Near the back wall, someone had left behind a copy of the Summit Guide, folded open to a page that now felt prophetic. Director of Inclusive Culture, Catherine Rowe. Just 5 words. But they'd taken a lifetime to earn. Outside, the evening air was turning. Autumn wasn't loud, but it changed everything just the same. Elise stood by the glass doors, watching the last rays spill across the parking lot. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She just liked seeing how far things had come, and maybe how far they could still go. Because when the system tries to erase you, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stay. Stay, build, lead. If this story stirred something in, you don't let it fade. Tell us, have you ever witnessed someone rise quietly and change everything? Or maybe you were that person. Your voice matters. Share your story below. Subscribe to Unveiled Wealth for more true stories where quiet power speaks loudest. And if you believe change can begin with one decision, make it now. Because the future doesn't start in boardrooms. It starts in moments like this.